How's it going, folks? Max here, and welcome back to another update for Street Fighter V. This is based off the footage that was provided from the Taipei Game Show, and I'd like to give a huge thanks to the Event Hub's crew for going out to this show and recording this footage, as it wasn't actually streamed or broadcasted, which is extremely funny in my opinion. But they did get some footage, they put it on YouTube, and they said it was totally okay for me to review this stuff and take a look at it, so if you guys want to watch the full unedited video, you can check it out over in the link in the description below. But let's talk about Street Fighter V and kind of where it's at right now, because if you look at that video and you check out the kind of the viewership comments regarding it, we saw Street Fighter V played in a way, well, it's only been played in two ways so far, the one at Capcom Cup and the one here, but now played in a way that were more very similar to the Street Fighter IV style that has a very patient kind of like waiting game. Usually within a lot of these gameplay demos, you do these things to like make things extra exciting. The stuff that, you know, like Mike Ross and Peter were able to do at Capcom Cup was definitely showing off a lot of moves of characters. Now, the thing is, when you actually see people playing it in terms of how it's going to be competitively consumed, which is what was going on with Daigo and GamerBee, there's a couple of worrisome tidbits, but let's talk about that later. Let's talk about the few things that are happening within the gameplay footage right here. The big one you're all going to notice is the fact that when Chun-Li activates her instinct, she pretty much gets exactly what we were talking about, these double variations of her special moves. And because of it, right now in the build, she throws 2 fireballs and can continually throw 2 fireballs. Usually in a majority of fighting games, you have something called a fireball limiter, meaning that if you were Ryu and you chuck the fireball from full screen, you can't check a second set of fireballs. You can't do like regular fireball into EX fireball. It's limited to kind of 1 fireball on screen at any given time. Early in the Street Fighter IV series, they did have something where you can kind of like confirm off a fireball from full screen if somebody landed into it into a Shinko Hadouken super fireball, so there has been some goofy stuff in the past that they have fixed, but in this situation, there is no fireball limiter on Chun-Li's double Kikokens that she gets when she's kind of in her water elemental activation. She throws 2, and then immediately as she's recovered from those 2, she throws 2 more, and then 2 more, and then 2 more, and all of a sudden we got something that looks extremely similar to Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and you're fighting against freaking Morrigan. And I absolutely don't think anything like this was intended. It's something as a result of the system being very early in its alpha state that they don't currently have a fireball limiter for some reason on Chun-Li's double Kikokens when she's in her elemental activation. So even though this is making a lot of people like, oh my god, I would probably not be too worried about it, because she can most likely throw 2 out and then that's it. Then you gotta follow it up and you gotta wait for those 2 to disappear. Then you can throw 2 more, which makes more sense to kind of every single other Street Fighter game. Other than that, Ryu does seem to have a pretty quick backdash and a kind of fast forward dash, even though they don't cover a lot of distance. But in some situations, we see Ryu kind of attacking Chun-Li as a result of throwing some fireballs, and then dashing in several times, and even after dashing in several times and Chun-Li hits the ground, he moves in like, I think 6 or 7 times, and even Daigo cannot reach Chun-Li across the entire stage. Even with that pressure, it looks like the stages are pretty big in this situation. And the other big issue that's kind of coming as a result of this is that dashing is fast, but oh my gosh, the weight of the characters is severe right now, because the walk speed of both Chun-Li and Ryu is brutally slow. It does look like they're going for the third strike approach to Ryu, though, where he's a very much heavy-hitting, kind of slower, bulky character, and he's the one that kind of does way more damage but moves much slower. The other interesting thing to note is that the build that they are playing appears to be the exact same playable build that we saw earlier from Peter Combo Fiend Rosas and Mike Ross, and it doesn't appear to be any different. That was the thing I was definitely hoping for, that they would have somewhat of an updated build, but sadly it wasn't the case, and it was kind of a situation where we get some other players to kind of show off the game. Chun-Li shows off some pretty interesting anti-air combo stuff where she leaps up into a combo similar that we saw in the trailers, and also performs a fairly tight Link combo that is looking very similar to Street Fighter IV stuff, where she confirms off many light attacks and goes into a special attack variation. And the rest is kind of stuff that we were able to decipher from the gameplay videos before. Ryu gets these crazy counter hit states, he also gets access to an unblockable fireball when he goes into his elemental activation, and it's all kind of familiar territory. What I kind of wanted to talk about outside of this gameplay is with the reaction of this video, and the reaction of the video has been overwhelmingly kind of negative in a lot of situations. I do think that for the sake of future gameplay demos that happen for Street Fighter V, especially until the game's in a state where it's publicly playable, where the systems are kind of finalized, they've worked out all the different mechanics that they actually want the game to have, and they're comfortable with letting humans touch it in a public environment, that they should be kind of more focused on who plays the game at what time, because in this situation, it didn't really look like this was a choreographed fight of any kind. It was very obvious that, Mike and Peter, when they were playing earlier, had some pretty cool things that they wanted to show off with the Street Fighter system, but when played in a natural environment, this alpha version of the game, when played competitively, which appeared to be what GamerBee and Daigo were doing, wasn't very exciting. There was some cool stuff that they did show off. The Chun-Li Fireball thing was very interesting, albeit it might not stay. We got to see some more animations of some moves, but within that argument, I would say that there are some moves that look extremely janky. I won't say this about Chun-Li. I think Chun-Li looks pretty fantastic, and she flows fairly well. But with Ryu, there are some things that still look extremely awkward to me. I think his low forward looks straight goofy, and his crouching short attack looks like it's something that came out of Mortal Kombat vs. DC. There is some stuff that needs polish, but it is an alpha game. You can't really complain too much about this, and I see why a lot of people are kind of going nuts about the game, saying it's boring, it's moving slow, because in all honesty, you guys are right. It is. It is moving slow right now. It is an early version of the game. And as much as a lot of people are going to say that, I'm like harking on this game because I'm working on Killer Instinct or something like that, I have been a Street Fighter fan for 25 years of my life, and I love the series almost more than anything else, and I kind of call it as I see them, and right now in this version of the game, yeah guys, I think Street Fighter V is a little too early to be demoed anymore in this version. I think I'd prefer them to work on a new build, wait a couple of months before they show us anything more from Street Fighter V, where they actually have something new, a different stage, some update to the stages where they have a little bit more life in them besides just some sparks every once in a while, where the animations are a little bit more polished, the system mechanics kind of more fleshed out, because right now it really does feel like the Street Fighter 2 in comparison to Super Turbo, and Super Turbo is what we want of Street Fighter V in terms of speed and mechanics, and right now it doesn't have it. And the couple of things I would suggest them to do, and number one on the priority list, is to increase the walk speed of the characters. I think Ryu and Chun-Li should move fast. Dashing wasn't present in the Alpha series, much less the Super Turbo game that everyone loves the crap out of, including myself, but the roster did have comparable walk speeds that could get them across the screen a little bit faster because they don't have access to dashes, which appeared in the Street Fighter 3 series, and of course everyone knows it from Street Fighter 4. There's even been some players that have been asking for the game to take away dashes, but I don't think that would be really good. I think they're kind of a fundamental part of the Street Fighter games. And at this point, from Street Fighter 4, I think Capcom is kind of playing the game a little bit safe in terms of its mechanics. It's got a revenge gauge, which is what the original Ultra combo was. It's got a super bar at the bottom. It's got very similar stuff that we're used to seeing from SF4. So I doubt that that is going to happen. But in conclusion, and from somebody that actually understands game development, I don't think it's right to complain about the game too much right now. It's in an alpha state, and I'm shocked that they chose to show it off a second time, but I do prefer that they don't show off this build anymore unless it's an extremely controlled environment. If they got like combos to show us, that's really cool. Another trailer showing some cool stuff off, that would be great. But in a situation where we got two very competitive, patient players that are going at it, it doesn't look very good. And outside of the graphics, the game still is going to depend on its graphics upgrade and looking very good, which we talked about in a previous video. But what it comes down to is, does it look fun to play? And in early versions and alpha versions, it just might not, which is, we can take from a comparison, the original Street Fighter 4 alpha videos. Like I said, guys, in summary, don't take away too much from this. The system mechanics are probably changing, as well as a lot of different things in regards to how the game looks, so I wouldn't be too upset with Street Fighter V right now, even though I do kind of agree with some of the people that were saying, hey, it looks kind of boring, it's not very exciting. And I really hope Capcom takes the feedback to heart. The next time we see the game, we have more focused system mechanics that they can talk about and show us, maybe another character, and then we can maybe finally get the game playable in some way at E3 later this year. Either way, guys, what do you think of the latest playable build of Street Fighter V that was shown off at Taipei? But as always, dudes, I'll be back more as soon as there's additional Street Fighter V information out there, and I hope we get to wait a little bit on this one so we get one of those updated builds. My name is Maximilian, and I'll see you guys next time.